Hi everyone, this is Sarah and this is my presentation on Immaculée Ilibagiza, her life and her mission. In this presentation, we are going to cover the questions: who is she? Why is she as important? What her story is? What has she done? What does she believe? What her message is? What she has achieved in life so far? And what we can learn from her story. Who was Immaculée Ilibagiza? Immaculée was born in Rwanda in 1972. She lost most of her family in the Rwandan genocide of 1994. She is a devout Roman Catholic and she is of the Tutsi tribe. She survived the genocide and then began to work with the United Nations. She immigrated to the US in 1998 and worked for the UN in New York City, and then she became a US citizen in 2007. So I'm going to start with a little brief overview of what caused the genocide of 1994. There was two tribes in Rwanda, the Tutsis and the Hutus. The Tutsis were kind of like the aristocracy for a while, and this was because they had the better jobs and they were more wealthy, mostly. Eventually, there was lots of disagreement between the two tribes, and even though they were very similar and they were neighbors and they were friends and they were family sometimes, um, they were very similar, but there was a few differences. The main differences were that the Tutsis were taller and that they had slightly lighter skin, while the Hutus were usually shorter and they had darker skin. But even this wasn't a very sure way to differentiate between the two tribes because there had been intermarriage going on for many, many years. Eventually, many of the Tutsis fled the country and were living in Uganda, and this was particularly in 1959 and in 1973 when there was fighting between the two tribes. And in her book, she says, in 1962, a Hutu government was firmly in place and the Tutsis had become second-class citizens. They were facing persecution, violence, and death at the hands of the Hutu extremists. Hutus were in the majority at this time, and in 1994, many Tutsis returned and they wanted equality, and these were the RPF soldiers. The president of Rwanda's plane was shot down, and this triggered the genocide. The Interahamwe was the Hutu extremist militia. They turned on their neighbors, the Tutsis, and began to kill them. They dehumanized them by subtly calling them cockroaches and snakes. The country of Rwanda was basically shut down until the job was done. The government's main goal was for all the Tutsis to be killed. The genocide continued for about 3 months, and more than 100 million people were murdered in roughly 100 days. So, what is her story? Immaculée was a member of the Tutsi tribe in Rwanda, and she worked very hard to get a good education, even though it was sometimes hard because of the discrimination. But she ended up going to a national school. I'm going to read a little bit about her off of her website. It says that she was born and raised in a small village in Rwanda, Africa, and she enjoyed a peaceful childhood with her loving parents and her 3 brothers. Education was very important to them, and she went on to attend the National University in Rwanda. There she studied electrical and mechanical engineering. She was visiting home for Easter break in 1994 that her life was transformed forever. On April 6th, the president's plane was shot down over the capital city of Kigali. The assassination of the Hutu president sparked months of massacres of the Tutsi tribe members throughout the country. Not even the small rural communities like Immaculee's were spared from the house-by-house slaughtering of men, women, and children. In order to protect his daughter from rape and murder, Immaculee's father told her to run to a local pastor's house for protection. The pastor quickly sheltered Immaculee and 7 other women in a hidden 3-by-4-foot bathroom. And then for 91 days, Immaculée and the other women huddled silently in this small bathroom. This was while the genocide raged outside the home and throughout the whole country. While she was in hiding, anger and resentment were destroying her mind, body, and spirit. It was then that Immaculée turned to prayer. Prior to going to the pastor's home, her father, a devout Catholic, gave her a set of rosary beads, and she began to pray the rosary as a way of drowning out the anger inside her and the evil outside the house. It was that point that turned her towards God and away from the hate that saved Immaculée. In addition to finding faith, peace, and hope during these 3 months of hiding, Immaculée also taught herself English. Immaculée was always a good student, and she was already fluent in Kinyarwanda and French, and she used only the Bible and a dictionary and a few other books that the pastor had that were very advanced for not knowing any English to start with, and she spent these countless hours in that bathroom, and she learned her 3rd language. After 91 days, Immaculée was finally liberated from her hiding place, only to face a horrific reality. She emerged from the small bathroom, and she weighed only 65 pounds. Previous to that, she was 40 pounds heavier. and she found her entire family brutally murdered, with the exception of one brother who was studying abroad. She also found nearly 1 million of her extended family, friends, neighbors, and fellow Rwandans massacred. After the genocide, Immaculée came face to face with a man who killed her mother and one of her brothers. After enduring months of physical, mental, and spiritual suffering, Immaculée was still able to offer the unthinkable, telling the man, "I forgive you." Here we have some pictures of Immaculée, and so this one is of her and her brother Damascene, who visited her like almost once a month when she was attending the National University because they attended school near each other. Next is this picture of her and her family. Her mother and her father are on the left. Next is this picture of her and her brother Vianney. And then below that is a picture of the pastor who she hid with for almost 3 months. And then in the middle is a picture of Immaculée sitting in the bathroom where she hid with the 7 other women for 91 days. And the bathroom's only 3 feet by 4 feet wide. So the next question is, what has she done? She's very hardworking and she's very determined. After the genocide, she worked very hard to get a job at the UN in Rwanda. Then she immigrated to the US in 1998 and she got a job at the UN in New York City. She has done lots of service, particularly with orphanages. She then wrote her book, Left to Tell, which told of her experience of love and forgiveness amidst the genocide, and now she is a full-time public speaker and writer. And this picture on the right is a picture of her at an orphanage where she did lots of service. Immaculée immigrated from Rwanda to the United States in 1998, and she continued to work for peace through United Nations. During that time, she shared her story with many coworkers and friends, and they were all very impacted by her testimony, and they all insisted that she write it down. 3 days after finishing the manuscript, she met with best-selling author Dr. Wayne W. Dyer, who, within only minutes of meeting her, offered to publish her book. He is quoted as saying, "There is something much more than charisma at work here. Immaculée not only writes and speaks about unconditional love and forgiveness, but she radiates it wherever she goes." The book, Left to Tell, Discovering God Amidst the Rwandan Holocaust, was released in March of 2006. It quickly became a New York Times bestseller, and to date, it has been translated into 17 languages and has sold over 2 million copies. The next question is, what is her message? Her message is very simple. It is that forgiveness is always possible and that only through God's love and forgiveness will we be able to find peace and freedom. So this next quote is from her book, and it is at the point in the book when she's in the bathroom right now, and she is she's hiding, and she's constantly praying to God for to protect her and the other women who are hiding, and that the killers who are only through the wall, they are very close to her, that they just won't be able to find her, and that that they will be protected. And so she's always praying, but there's one part of the prayer that she can never bring herself to say, and it's the part that says, "Forgive us our trespassers." And finally, at this point, she's able to forgive them. And it says, I held onto my father's rosary and asked God to help me. And again I heard his voice, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." I took a crucial step toward forgiving the killers that day. My answer was draining from me. I'd opened my heart to God, and He touched it with His infinite love. For that first time I pitied the killers. I asked God to forgive their sins and to turn their souls toward His beautiful light. That night I prayed with a clear conscience and a clean heart. For the first time since I entered the bathroom, I slept in peace. And this next quote is from the point in the book where the genocide is mostly over and she's out of hiding. She's in Kigali, a big city, I'm pretty sure, and she's been trying for days and weeks and to get a job at United Nations because that's the only place that she could really have any chance of getting a job, but it doesn't look very good. And finally, she goes to her university and she picks up her stuff. She has some money. She buys some new clothes. She gets cleaned up and she goes back to United Nations and she still isn't given the job. But on the way out, she meets this man who he thinks it's this other lady who he thought had been killed, but he hears her story and he then gives her the job, and she says, "I was living proof of the power of prayer and positive thinking, which really are almost the same thing. God is the source of all positive energy, and prayer is the best way to tap into His power. God had brought me a long way from the bathroom, and He'd walked with me every step of the way, saving me from the killers, filling my heart with forgiveness, helping me to learn English, delivering me to safety, providing me with friendship, shelter, and food, and finally introducing me to Mr. Mihu and my dream job. No matter what I'd been through in the past several months, God had never left my side and I had never been alone." The next question is, what has she achieved in life so far? Well, she wrote her book, Left to Tell, as well as its sequel, Led by Faith, and 5 other books. She is married and has 2 children. She became a U.S. citizen in 2007, and at the ceremony where she and the other immigrants were receiving their citizenship, she was asked to speak, and there she shared her story. Currently, she devotes all of her time to public speaking and writing books to share her message of love and forgiveness. She established the Left to Tell charitable fund in 2007, which helps to support Rwandan orphans. And she has been recognized and honored with numerous humanitarian awards. These include the Mahatma Gandhi International Award for Reconciliation and Peace, the American Legacies Women of Strength and Courage Award, and the 2015 National Speakers Association Master of Influence Award. The final question is, what can we learn from her inspiring story? There's lots of things that we can learn from it, such as determination and hard work, but I think the main message is that through Immaculee's inspiring story, we can all learn that forgiveness and love is always possible. I have two more quotes. The first is from the very end of her book, and it's right at the point where she finally becomes face to face with the man who murdered her mother and her father, Damascene. The quote says, Felicien was sobbing. I could feel his shame, and he looked up to me for only a moment, but our eyes met. I reached out, touched his hands lightly, and quietly said what I'd come to say, I forgive you. My heart eased immediately. What was that all about, Immaculée? Well, that was the man who murdered your family. I brought him for you to question, to spit on him if you wanted to. But you forgave him. How could you do that? Why did you forgive him? I answered him with the truth. Forgiveness is all I have to offer. And this next quote is from the epilogue of the book, and it says, So if there was ever a time for forgiveness, it is now. Rwanda can be a paradise again, but it will take the love of an entire world to heal my homeland. And that's how it should be. For what happened in Rwanda happened to all of us. Humanity was wounded by the genocide. The love of a single heart can make a world of difference. I believe that we can heal Rwanda and our world by healing one heart at a time. I hope that my story helps. So that's my presentation. I really hope that you enjoyed it and that you hopefully learned something about her that you didn't already know and that you were inspired by her awesome story. And so here are the two sources that I use. The first is her book, Left to Tell, Discovering God Amidst the Rwandan Holocaust, which is written by her. And the second is her website. Thank you for watching.